everybody. We are going to read chapters 6 through 9 of The Case of the April Fool's Frog by Nancy Starr. Let's see where they are. Dottie got to town first. She waited for her friends to catch up. She tried to peek in the window of the news store, but it was covered with paper, so she couldn't see inside. Casey and Leon joined her. Together they walked to Pet Me. But when they got to the door of the pet store, they stopped. There was a sign on the door. Leon read it out loud. "Use the other door." "What other door?" asked Casey. "There is no other door," said Dottie. Dottie peered through the window. "Mr. Cliff is inside," she said. "I can see him talking to a customer." Mr. Cliff noticed Dottie, Casey, and Leon standing outside his store. He waved. He motioned for them to come in. The three friends shook their heads. Mr. Cliff came outside. "Is everything all right?" he asked. "We can't figure out how to get in your store," said Dottie. "What's wrong with using the door?" asked Mr. Cliff. Leon pointed to the sign. Mr. Cliff read it. "I didn't put that sign on my door," said Mr. Cliff, "but I'd like to know who did." "Hey, Leon!" someone called out. They turned. It was Warren Bunn. "There's a giant spider behind you," yelled Warren. This time Leon didn't look. Warren and Derek sat on their bikes and laughed. Mr. Cliff walked over to them. "Did you put that sign on my door, Warren?" asked Mr. Cliff. Warren stopped laughing. "Yes," he said, "but it was just a joke." "I'd like you to take it down now, please," said Mr. Cliff. "Okay," said Warren. He took the sign down. "Sorry," he added quietly. "Hey, Leon," Derek called out. "There's a big hairy monster behind you." "We're not doing that anymore," Warren said. He got on his bike and rode away as fast as he could. Derek hopped on his bike and tried to catch up. Dottie, Casey, and Leon followed Mr. Cliff into his store. They brought the buckets with them. "What do you have in there?" asked Mr. Cliff. "Frogs," said Leon. "Lots of frogs." "Did you stop by to find out how to take care of them?" asked Mr. Cliff. "We do have a few questions," said Dottie, "but not only about frogs." "I'm just finishing up with a customer," said Mr. Cliff. "Can you wait for me in my office?" "Yes," said the three friends together. "It's a little crowded in there today," Mr. Cliff told them. "I got a big delivery this morning, and I think you'll find it interesting." Mr. Cliff returned to his customer. Dottie, Casey, and Leon went into his office. When they got there, they couldn't believe their eyes. Chapter 7, Special Delivery. Casey counted 5 tall tanks. Dottie counted 15 frogs. Mr. Cliff finished with his customer and joined them. "I see you found the delivery," he said. "The frogs came this morning with a note." He took the note out of his pocket and read it. "Would you take care of these frogs and bring them to Fruitvale Park at noon on April 1st? "That's when the April Fool's Festival starts," said Leon. "Is this a practical joke?" asked Casey. "There's nothing funny about the frogs," said Mr. Cliff. "They look like our frogs," said Leon. "Where did you find yours?" asked Mr. Cliff. "We were hunting for the gowk," Dottie explained. "Hunting for the what?" asked Mr. Cliff. "The missing gowk," Dottie said. "Have you ever heard of a gowk?" asked Casey. "No," Mr. Cliff admitted. He walked over to his bookshelf. He pulled out the biggest book and handed it to Dottie. "This book lists lots of animals," he said. "Maybe you can look up what a gowk is." Dottie, Casey, and Leon gathered around the book. The animals were listed in alphabetical order. Dottie turned to the page marked G. "I see goose, gopher, and gorilla," she said, "but no gowk." "I see grackle, grasshopper, and gray snake," said Leon, "but no gowk." "Does this book list every animal there is?" asked Casey. "Maybe not everyone," said Mr. Cliff. "I think we should try the library," Dottie said. "That's a very good idea," said Mr. Cliff. "Miss Webster has even more books about animals than I do." "Do you want to leave your frogs with me?" he asked. "I have an extra tank." "Thanks," said Dottie. "Our frogs would be happier in a tank than in a library." Dottie and Casey took the frogs out of the buckets. They put them in the empty tank. Leon took the rocks out of the buckets. He put them in his pocket. They thanked Mr. Cliff and hurried on. They needed to get home before dark, and they didn't have much time. Chapter 8. In the Book Bin. They found the librarian, Miss Webster, near the reference books. She was pacing back and forth. "Hi, Miss Webster," said Dottie. "Do you have any books about gowks?" asked Casey. "We have books about everything," said Miss Webster. She was about to help them find what they wanted, but Officer Gill walked in. "Thank goodness you're here," Miss Webster said to him. "I found them in the overnight book bin outside. 3 of them." "3 gowks?" asked Casey. "No," said Miss Webster, "frogs. Can you imagine? 3 huge frogs in the book bin." "What time did you find them?" asked Officer Gill. They stepped inside Miss Webster's small office so she could explain what happened. "I don't think Miss Webster is going to be able to help us today," said Dottie. "Do you want to come back tomorrow?" asked Casey. "Yes," said Leon, "but I want to look something up first." Dottie and Casey followed Leon. He knew exactly where to find what he wanted. Leon pulled out a thick book from a shelf. He put the book down on one of the long library tables. He turned to the page he wanted. Then he took a rock out of his pocket. "Yes," he said, "I thought so." "What did you find?" asked Casey. Leon pointed from the rock to the picture in the book. "It's Louisiana," he said. "Were you looking for Louisiana?" asked Casey. "No," said Leon, "but I'm really glad I found it." "Why?" asked Casey. "There is a city in Louisiana named Rain," said Leon, "and it's known as the frog capital of the world." Leon knew lots of facts like that. Dottie and Casey were used to it. The light flicked on and off. "Closing time," called Miss Webster. "Officer Gill has gone home," she said, "and it's time for you to go home too." Dottie, Casey, and Leon said goodbye to Miss Webster. "How many states have you found so far?" Casey asked Leon as they left. Leon didn't answer. He was staring at the rock in his hand. "Is something wrong?" asked Casey. Leon looked up. "Sorry," he said. "I was just thinking about the frog capital of the world and the missing gowk." What does the frog capital of the world have to do with the missing gowk?" asked Casey. "I feel like there's a connection," said Leon, "but I'm just not sure what it is." He tried hard to think of it all the way home. Chapter 9. April Fools. The next day was Saturday. The Calendar Club agreed to meet in the clubhouse at 8:30. Dottie got there first. Casey and Leon arrived a minute later. Then they all got to work. Dottie and Casey got ready for the look-alike contest. Casey put Dottie's hair in braids so their hair would look the same. Dottie gave Casey a notebook that looked exactly like the one she carried wherever she went. "Do you like it?" Dottie asked. "Do you want a different one? Do you need a pen or a pencil?" "Do I ask that many questions all the time?" asked Casey. They all laughed. "Come on outside," Leon said, "and watch me practice juggling eggs." Casey and Dottie followed Leon outside. He threw 3 eggs in the air. They fell to the ground and broke. "Maybe you should try 2 at a time," said Dottie. Leon took 2 eggs out of his pocket. He threw them in the air. They broke and splattered too. "I think you're going to win the look-alike contest," said Leon, "but I don't think I'm going to win the egg juggling contest." "Is it time to go?" asked Dottie. She turned to Casey. "Are you ready?" "We have to check the help box first," said Casey. "It's Leon's turn." Leon checked the box. "There's a note," he said. He read it out loud. "Today is the day the gowk will be found. Don't wander or dawdle on your way to town. Get to the park and don't stop to talk. The gowk will be watching wherever you walk. Go have some April Fool's festival fun, and then at the end you will find out who won." "Let's go to the park," said Casey, "so we can be first." She ran on ahead. "What's so great about being first?" asked Dottie. She and Leon laughed. Then they ran to catch up. And that is the end of Chapter 9, my friends. We are going to read 10 and 11 tomorrow, which will wrap it up, and we will see just what a gowk might be.